True love, prosperity, and respect. Love is life. All is love. Humanity.
What do you see as agricultural challenges and opportunities in Africa? What do you see are those challenges and opportunities in agriculture at the moment?
It's a difficult situation. If I saw it, I think the issue would be solved already, because there's a lot more people brilliant than myself that, you know, are observing and studying these things. But right off the bat, you know, electricity is a situation, and also equipment. You know, solar pumps, solar lights, and equipment. There's a lot of people, for example, because of the whole climate change scenario, who are going to, their farms are going to suffer. A lot of like, you know, average everyday farmers, because the cost of the machinery that you're going to need to create forced irrigation is going to be big.
In the long run, you realize that the solar pump is much cheaper than the engine pump. We look at an initial cost being a little higher than the engine pump, but the subsequent operational costs, we find that in the second or third year, the engine pump has already surpassed the cost for the solar pump. We are looking at a total cost of 4 million for this kind of pumping system. The 4 million includes the pump and the 3 panels. This is maximum power for such kind of a pump. So we look at a total cost of 4 million.
I've been around for a few years, and one of the things that most of the farmers say is that the rains are not as predictable as they used to be, right? It's changing, it's changing. That's what they keep
Rain-fed
saying.
agriculture, or agriculture that's highly dependent on nature's providence, is standing in the way of progress for many that sit within this particular subsector. The option therefore becomes irrigation. Today we unpack some of the technologies in irrigation and how this can help you transform your performance in this sector and probably help you achieve your dreams much earlier than you thought.
This system involves a solar pump and solar panels to provide the power for the pump. The pump draws water from the reservoir to a tank, an overhead tank. And then from the overhead tank, the water is supplied through a drip system. So it's a direct current pump. So the panels generate direct current from the sun, which in turn drives the motor that drives the pump that delivers the water now. Well, if we looked at 6 sunshine hours, we are guaranteed to pump over 15,000 liters in a day.
A lot of people, if you don't have forced irrigation to dig wells, to pump water, how are you going to be able to make it, you know? Because right here, in a place that has most of the arable land in the world, this is where you're going to see the consequence of climate change.
Specifically, are you doing in agriculture?
Well, specifically, what me and my team are doing is trying to make sustainable communities through utilization of the lands in order to make sure that they're able to support themselves rather than relying on aid and you know, so many organizations making stringent contracts with them in order to give them money to produce what they have to do.
Why?
Okutuyamba okukendeeza ku ssente ziba zigenda ewaka.
Yeah.
Kuba tuba tukola ki?
It has helped them to reduce on expenditure, because they can produce the tomatoes in their homes. They can grow their food in their homes instead of relying on buying the food.
Kati nekituwa n'obulamu, nekituwa okubeera nti tufuna n'obulamu obulungi okusinziira ku bye tulima bye tulya.
Their children and themselves, they are not malnourished.
It is only through agriculture that you can cause a great change in the area where you live, in the community, and in the nation.
Why?
Well, because I think that this is what will save not just here, but everywhere else. And I think if it can be done here, it can be done in a lot of places that have access to a lot more resources and technology. So to me, this is the ground zero. So, you know, it's sort of requiem of a dream. Once you create it here, you can certainly go and, you know, create a mold in a lot of other places.
In scale.
Yeah.
So do you see any opportunities there that can support agriculture?
Oh, definitely. I think one of the things that has to occur is partnership between, you know, the local people and a lot of mom and pop shops. I think corporations work alongside the government, which can be very interesting, depending on what country you're in and what situation you're in. But I would encourage them to also work with locals who have large-scale land. But this land could benefit people in a lot of places. For example, when you look at people from cold climates, let's say Canada, though it's a lot of land, you look at Canada, the land is so big, but the population is less than Uganda, right? So what occurs there is it's a scientific place where they don't have a lot of organic foods because, you know, to feed that population, you need chemistry. Because the rate at which people consume compared to the rate at which things grow is absolutely not sustainable.
When I look at the quality of food that I can buy at the grocery store, the freshness of fruit and vegetables, it really isn't that good here in Canada. And although that alone is not something that would convince me to move out of the country, I have to admit that it is an issue. It's on my mind when I can go to other countries and have, you know, non-GMO beef in Spain that tasted amazing, or, you know, incredibly fresh fruit in Mexico. Now, we probably won't find all of this in one spot, but Canada, when it comes to fresh fruits and vegetables, yeah, it's a bit lacking.
So the results later on is, you know, in my opinion, phenomena such as diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, and such things from, you know, preservatives that prevent food from dissipating the way it's supposed to once it goes through the system.
That's very interesting.
So what I am looking at is to get individuals, which I have already, from over there to be able to partner with some of the farmers here and open up a trade situation where, you know, they can at least assist the farms here in modernizing with their resources and be involved in a trade system where, you know, there is fair trade value, so that the primary industry usually suffers in fair trade value because you know, people usually just take right from the ground and give it to a manufacturer who knows how to make, you know, tertiary products. In the secondary industry, they produce tertiary products that cost more than, way more, maybe, you know, 10 times more than what they're paying the farmers. From my experience in Grenada, that's in the Caribbean, the Lesser Antilles. Now, we used to grow up bringing big bags of nutmeg over our backs, you know, going on steep slopes.
Did you grow up like that doing this?
Yes, 10 years,
Wow.
you know, and then when we brought it to the market, you know, some of the nutmeg would be spoiled. They would put it in water to see which has oil. If some float and some stay at the bottom, they will tell you what's good and what's not good, right? And sometimes they bring a bag that's so big and they get like $2.43. You know, and yeah, it was unbelievable. And then I use this example because some ingenious individuals decided to make nutmeg syrup. The production aspect, you know, in the secondary industry is what I think places that have so much agriculture, like Africa, South America, the Caribbean, and places like Bangladesh and such, have to concentrate on. You know, and make their own products in order to get more partnership and fully be involved in the economic system throughout their lands. Because if not, what happens is the lands just become a place for possibly hotels. You know, in the Caribbean, a lot of arable land have been turned into hotels because they're islands, so they don't have a lot of space. So tourism is their main money bringer. So throughout the world, we're seeing, because of the business choices and what they see as fast available to give them sustainability, a lot of people are looking into situations of, building car factories and such and destroying lands and selling off lands that they have to participate in the money income of other industries. And then when they do get that money, they have to look for food anyways, which is becoming scarce because of the death of arable land across. So it's a circle where, for some reason, people are not seeking the simplicity of it to understand that later on we eat now, but not too much people are thinking, in my opinion, of their fellow tribe members who are to be born, their family members who are to be born and come up. Because it's one thing if we eat well and we sell our family's land, but what about the family who's going to be born after us? We have to think of a legacy on a worldwide basis to protect, sustainable foods.
I really love that concept, and I really love what you're saying there. There's two things that really, really stand out for me, and one, it's almost a regeneration and thinking of the next generation with future care in mind. And when I listen to your story about the nutmeg, I cannot help but think how many products or how many things we can actually rethink that might be securing a more sustainable future. But you spoke about something called mom and pop shops.
Mom and pop shops is just a slogan for individual sole proprietors or small businesses. Because they're superstores that take up so much land, and then they bring so much traffic because of the groceries that come in and goods that come in. So these stores now, I don't know what a variant would be in the UK, but these stores usually undersell the mom and pop shops and they kind of compete with them, right? So then the mom and pop shops, they tend to shut down as a result because of the big corporations that come and they monopolize the grocery industry. So the mom and pop shops, those are individuals who are who might not be able to pay the amount that the corporations are willing to pay, but they will certainly bargain with the local farmer better. The corporations, it's a straight standard that they're dealing with. And then the tricky thing about it is, even if they were offering an amicable price, you don't have enough for what they're asking. Because let's say you have a corporation, that makes bread, and the amount of flour that they're going to ask for, a local farmer who maybe has, 10, 12 acres of wheat is not going to be able to supply them. Right, so cooperatives have to be formed where they can possibly meet the standard amount to be able to sell to them. But with the mom and pop shops dealing, depending on what produce it is, individually they can certainly bargain where the farmer also benefits and where they also benefit and can stay competitive with the corporations and also supplying the local people who are buying from them also.
And I think most of them are not really concepts, right? But interesting thoughts that you're bringing to the table.
We all eat. Yet, our current food system does not work for farmers or consumers. We are creating an abundance of unhealthy food that is making consumers sick, destroying the environment, and keeping farmers in poverty. In the global marketplace, big multinational corporations have a lot of power, and this power has a dramatic impact on the farmers who grow the crops we consume every day. Let's say you are a small-scale farmer in Latin America, Africa, or Asia, and you grow coffee, cocoa, quinoa, or cotton, and you want to sell your crops to the international market. But you have to compete against large-scale corporate farms that receive government subsidies, have easy access to credit, and can take advantage of lower costs due to their size. Since you don't have credit and you're selling a relatively small amount, you need to sell it fast for whatever cash you can get. So you're forced to go through a middleman that offers you less than your crops cost to grow. With no choice, you sell at a loss. You and other farmers are forced off your land. You migrate to look for work in the industrial agricultural machine, subject to further exploitation. Because of this, small-scale farmers started organizing to share information and services, negotiate prices, access credit, and advocate for better government policies to stop this cycle of exploitation.
Something else that I heard you say in a previous conversation that led me to this question, and I'm curious whether you think there's scope for social investment in African agriculture.
Absolutely. You know, especially there's an interesting situation that occurs in Africa, right? That the book Dead 80. I'm sorry, I can't remember the lady's name who wrote that book. That she covered, but she didn't capsulize it in the way that I am going to right now. But a lot of the people in, especially, a lot of the impoverished countries, part of the problem is they know how to receive, but they have no idea how to give.
What do you mean by that?
Well, there is a saying from a musician I believe he's from Memphis, MJG, and he said you need to stop sticking your hand out and start to fold them, right? And I always carried that with me. Over here, everyone wants to receive from, whether it be the Red Cross, from the UN, this corporation, that corporation. Now, once they receive, paying the workers, it's an inert problem that I've seen here. Paying workers, fairly sharing the profits, this is a problem. Once they receive, the disbursement is not there, and I think we're leaving a bad example, because going into the realm of social justice, you need to reinvigorate the idea of social justice. If everyone just wants to receive, who is the new generation of people who are going to say, hey, there's trouble over there, and possibly risk their lives to go over there and live with people and take time out of their lives to help individuals with their resources?
But now I'm also curious, because I think there are so many people out there, personal investors or private investors, that are eager to just invest into Africa, not knowing that they can also do a lot of harm. So what would your advice be to private investors or people that just want to hand the money to that hand that is sticking out? What can be a practical approach or a consideration before you just feed the empty hand?
Social justice minded. In anything that you're doing, pay one of your executives to make the trip. Go see what's happening over there. Me, myself, I'm here because in my circle of colleagues, I've been sent to Uganda. We have people who've been sent to Ghana, people who've been sent to Ethiopia. You need to see what's actually going on the ground, and partner with the people where you're going. And the people who are eager to give, I don't know that they're eager to give, because you see, there's two ways about this. I understand the Western system very well of capitalism. It's a requirement for some people to save their organizations in order to give. So that's why you see a lot of blind money also landing here in order for them to settle their differences tax-wise and relations to the governments, right? So in that way, a lot of people can get spoiled because they're in that system of receiving just to satisfy a tax burden for corporation in the West. And then those people, there's no one to hold them accountable for their, requirements to appropriately dispense the funds or appropriately share it out to help the people who it's meant to help. For those who are really, have it in their heart to give, I believe that they will try to make the trip or try to make some contact with people to make things happen. The best way to assure your situation, if you're in an organization, it doesn't cost anything. It costs as much to go to Africa as it costs to go to Cuba on vacation. So take a plane, come over. Things here are not as expensive as the West. You can make it happen. You can get support from friends and sit down and see what's going on. Call some organizations before, say, hey, I'm coming, I'm interested in this and that and that. I'll cover my own expenses, but just show me some things and impress me. You have to try the spirits. You have to try the spirits and see what they're really about. You can't just expect things to, even people who are locals here, for example. There's people who are locals here and in any country, and they tell me stories of they've been living in the West for a long time, and then they sent monies to family members to take care of things for them. And when they came back, they found air. You know, so you know,
it was fresh air.
Yeah, they just found air, or whatever they asked them to do, it wasn't accomplished. And I think that happens in a lot of places. So those who are really eager to make it happen, contact people like yourself, myself, the appropriate people who've been doing it for years, who have reputation and who have an online presence where they can be held accountable for things that go wrong.
So credibility and accountability.
Precisely.
Is very key. I have another question. I didn't plan to ask this, but I'm curious on your perspective on this as well. Do you think that Africa is really this helpless continent in dire need as it is portrayed to the Western world?
I think Africa will save the world. All right, I think Africa will save the world. I don't see it that way as how the question you asked is painting as a place in dire need. I think people have always been here and will continue to be here. Polls show that while in other places such as Japan, the West, there are places that are compensating people in order to have children. Here still, people on a large basis have 4 to 6 children. So they're going to overtake what China was and what India currently is. So, you know, people have to be, you know, mathematic. When you say that, okay, you know, cholera and malaria and such things are interfering and destroying populations. There've been so much organizations giving aid here for so much diseases and virus, and bless the AIDS organizations, because I've seen the work that they've done in Rakai, and it's really amazing, you know. But if that's the case, that the place is in so much danger, how come the population in the places that are supposedly helping them went down while Africa is rising?
So interesting.
Right? So there is something mathematic here that people have to think simplicity and look at what they're saying, because over here, when there is a lot of confusing information online, they will say that, I've read some places that they said that, hey, 90% of the population survive on less than $5 a day, and, you know, 95% of the population survive on less than $10 a day. Look, all of that stuff is misleading information.
I was curious about that.
It's misleading information. Come to Africa and see what's going on. I've went to some places here and ordered a plate of food that cost 50 cents. Right? And the plate was bigger than any plate I can get in a restaurant in the West.
Well, we passed the local market and it was beautiful seeing all the local ladies on their smartphones.
Yeah,
so that in itself is very questionable.
Of course.
But that's really interesting perspective, and I haven't thought about it in that way as well. So would you say it's safe to say that we should stay away from social justice in Africa?
No, social justice is necessary, and you have to teach the next generation to be social justice minded, because what has to happen is a mind shift in what is valuable, you know, agriculture wise. And the real danger for the West.
What would that look like? What would you say if you have to say, okay, this is how I think social justice mindset would look like or should look like through the lens of agriculture? How would you frame that?
Appropriate courses, the need of permaculture, right? Not using big machinery to do farming, so that those who are not, you know, having a lot of financial abilities still know and understand a way in order to, you know, grow food for themselves without being able to hire a tractor, which might cost how many shillings or dollars per week, per acre and such, right? And that would do with organizations. Spreading, teaching permaculture, you know, teaching people how to grow things, teaching people how to use and reuse things. And I think it has to happen where even in the Western Hemisphere, how many classes are teaching anything in terms of like the theory of decency, in terms of taking care of the earth and taking care of people and sharing. Right? It's very capitalistic, the education that is back West, and everyone is taught, mostly 80% is taught to become a consumer than...
Name 3 attitudes or values something that you as a human should bring to survive in Africa, what would that be? What would you say you need this and this and this?
I would say farm.
So what if it wasn't farm? What if it was something internal?
You have to have the zeal. You have to have the zeal of someone who's interested in social justice. You have to have the zeal to be, direct and be hands-on in something that Africa is offering. When you move here, there is possibly 3 reasons why people move to Africa. Love of nature, search of self, and investment opportunities. Love of nature, those who see that this is one of the last places on earth that has such a diverse ecosystem. You look at Tanzania where, you can find mountains with snow on it, to swamps, to valleys, to savanna, to deserts. And this is love of nature. And everyone in the West still likes to have, a pot of flowers. They ask for wood grain on the car because it's something that reminds them of nature rather than the mechanical beast that they're driving, So I think love of nature is one thing. Seeking self, I think that Africa is the final frontier. You come here, you meet so many different individuals. It's a place for everybody. It's a place where the scientists say everyone came from, right? And returning home is, I think, something that is cosmic in human beings. From the beginning of time, when they called here the dark continent, the hearts and souls of mankind is dark. We seek light in the dark, so I think everyone comes here to try to find something, and that they will find their origins and beginnings here, find purpose, even being inspired by seeing the way that nature has been undisturbed for years. You see, in other countries, possibly in the West, we are beings of habit. We wake up in the morning, we go by the clock. Here, the lion grows up as it has thousands of years ago. He dies thousands of years ago without anyone giving any instructions, without reading any pamphlets, and no alarms. That is, that is something that is cosmic. And I think we realize that sometimes we want to leave where we are and come here in order to be in that purpose without having a purpose. And then the last bit of it, I would say, is the financial aspect. Of course, since the beginning of time, we know that places like France, the Americas and such have been, made rich by this continent and continue to. Just the other day, they found, I think, 17 trillion worth of gold here in Uganda, right? 17 trillion worth of gold. They have the biggest refinery in East Africa being built in Uganda. They say the Congo still has trillions of resources left, despite how much King Leopold, the Germans, the Americans, the Chinese, the Russians who are in there right now, how much that they have taken and brought all the way to Silicon Valley in California to power their, gadgets and such. And it still has so much more, it seems impossible. So anyone who is of a capitalistic mind, this is a logical place. This is a logical place to make a startup and really be able to launch. So those 3 reasons, Africa is providing a launching point for everyone around the world to become something, whether it be, for profit, whether it be to find themselves, or whether it be for love.
I really like the word zeal. I think I want a t-shirt that says, I like your zeal. Well, I'll credit you on that one though. My last question is, what can an alternative partnership look like for the future of Africa?
An alternative partnership? That's difficult, I think an alternative partnership, and what I'm going to say is more of an ideal than a reality because of the capitalistic nature of the rest of the world.
Remember, Africa is where you can do you never know, right?
True. You can do so many things here indeed. I would say one where people are face-to-face partners. Face-to-face partners with the individuals you're trading with or who is sponsoring you, and respective opinions. You know, I think the alternative situation for Africa is what I said at the genesis of this conversation. Time to stop sticking your hand out and start to fold them, right? Learning to give back because they have so much, right? So it's a strange thing where they have so much, but they keep on asking for more. So, you know, in Africa, as Africans, we have to learn to be able to give back and save the rest of the world with the things that we have by dictating some of the partnerships that are being forged that will benefit everyone on a more larger scale.
Wow. Well, in closing, if you can look to the camera and if you just want to give a shout out of advice to other African farmers or to other farmers in Africa that might resonate with this conversation, go for it.
Well, I would say continue doing what you're doing. There is obstacles in all forms of life, but there is no substitute in owning your own land. You don't own your own land, someone else will own it for you. Then they will be your landlord and you'll end up in a feudal situation, if you know what I'm saying. So stick to your land, don't sell your family's land, all of it away, and keep on grinding and put faith in the earth. It's written that he who tills the soil will receive bread. Him who chases after vain individuals will find poverty. Yeah.
Beautiful. Whoa, look at me getting goosebumps from your words. Whoa, what an interview.
That's actually Proverbs number 18.